Young Turks brought to you by Busted Tees. Go to bustedtees.com and enter promo code Young Turks to get 10% off your order.
Story that got me angry today, and it relates to back when I was doing the Young Turks on a regular basis back in 2005. Colin Powell, former Secretary of State, today slammed the intelligence agencies, both the Defense Intelligence Agency and the Central Intelligence Agency, for their reliance on the testimony of the informant known as Curveball and the information Curveball supplied that led us to go to war with Iraq. This is what Colin Powell said today in slamming U.S. intelligence officials. Curveball has now admitted to The Guardian that his claims about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq were falsified. This is information that we knew for some time that Curveball had lied, but I guess now formally Curveball has come out and said that he lied. In a statement to CNN, Powell said that it has become clear over the years that Curveball, whose real name is Rafid Ahmed Alawan al-Janabi, was totally unreliable. And Powell says the question should be put to the CIA and the DIA as to why this wasn't known before the false information was put into the key intelligence estimate sent to Congress and the President's State of the Union address. And of course, Powell, there you see him giving the speech, his important February 5th, 2003 presentation to the United Nations, where he said, "We have firsthand descriptions of biological weapons factories on wheels and on rails. The source was an eyewitness." He's talking about Curveball. He says an Iraqi chemical engineer who supervised one of these facilities. That, of course, we know now is a lie. He was present during biological agent production runs. He was also at the site when an accident occurred in 1998. 12 technicians died. Curveball has now confessed to lying. Among the many things that he lied about was witnessing that accident. So what got me about that story is that this is getting some attention now, as it should, and I'm glad it's getting attention. So I'm torn a little because I am glad it's getting attention. But we did this story in 2005. Cenk and I did, largely on the strength of reporting in a Los Angeles Times piece that came out in November of 2005 by Bob Drogan and John Getz. Bob Drogan has since gone on, published in 2007, to write a terrific book about Curveball, how one man led us to war. And it's not really an overstatement that one man led us to war. Obviously, a bunch of men chose to believe that one man, and then it will be up to you, reasonable people, to determine whether we were just simply hoodwinked or whether we decided to be hoodwinked in letting that one man lead us to war. I would choose that we sort of chose to be hoodwinked, and I think many of you would as well. I think that's a reasonable conclusion that anybody would make. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to read some of this November 2005 piece. It was written in the LA Times that led to really what took up most of the Young Turks show that Cenk and I did back in November of 2005. And that this comes out now. We knew he was lying back in 2005. And German intelligence, who briefed him starting in 1999, who interrogated him starting in 1999, they knew that he was lying almost from the moment that they started debriefing him, certainly into 2000. So the story begins here. German intelligence officials responsible for one of the most important informants on Saddam Hussein's suspected weapons of mass destruction say the Bush administration and the CIA repeatedly exaggerated his claims during the run-up to the war in Iraq. Five senior officials from Germany's Federal Intelligence Service, which is called the BND, said in interviews with the LA Times they warned U.S. intelligence authorities, the source, Curveball, never claimed to produce germ weapons, never saw anyone else do so. According to the Germans, again, this is 2005. This is 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago. According to the Germans, President Bush mischaracterized Curveball's information when he warned before the war Iraq had at least 7 mobile factories brewing biological weapons. Then Secretary of State Colin Powell also misstated Curveball's accounts during that speech to the UN. Curveball's German handlers for the last 6 years said his information was often vague, mostly secondhand, impossible to confirm. Quote, "This was not substantial evidence," said a German intelligence official. "We made clear we could not verify the things he said." Again, the German official saying, "We made clear we couldn't verify it, yet still we went to war." German authorities, speaking about the case for the first time, also said their informant suffered from emotional and mental problems. Now, Curveball in 1999 leaves Iraq and he goes to Germany because he applies for asylum, because Germany, European countries in general, Germany specifically, was the best, if you got asylum, at essentially giving you money. So if you got asylum, you were most likely to get some cash, you'd be able to get a good house. That was the place to go. So he goes, he gets in, he got to get out of Saddam. He had worked as a chemical engineer, but he'd been fired, it turned out, in 1995. His family thought he was whacked out. He gets to Germany and he wants stuff. And then as it turns out, what we learn is his recollections are really good when he wants stuff. And then as soon as he got stuff, he's like, I don't really remember. So in 1999, he applies for political asylum in November 1999 in Germany, tells German officials for the first time he built germ weapons trucks. Investigators later conclude he made up the story to get a visa. Okay, so that's 1999. Curveball claims were crucial to the case for war, it says to the report. October 2002 national intelligence estimate that concluded Iraq has biological weapons was, quote, based almost exclusively on information obtained from Curveball, according to the report. By early 2001, the CIA was getting messages from German intelligence that Curveball was, quote, out of control. Early 2001, out of control. Yet still, 2 years later, we're going to go to war based on this. So then finally, about midnight before Powell's UN presentation, so in early February 2003, before Powell's presentation, an agency officer describes a telephone conversation with George Tenet, then the director of the CIA, where the officer warned against relying on Curveball's testimony. Quote, Tenet replied with words to the effect of, yeah, and that he was tired, that he was, quote, exhausted. The commission's report said, again, this is in the commission's report, 601 pages, that Tenet was really tired. Then Pavitt told the commission he was aware of, quote, handling problems with Curveball, but he did not know Curveball was the dominant source for biological weapons assessments. Bullshit. McLaughlin and Tenet told the panel they did not recall receiving those warnings about Curveball. They're lying. By the way, Tenet, McLaughlin, and Pavitt all left the CIA last year. That means they all left 2004. So they didn't know that there were warnings about... Didn't they ask? Like, that's one thing, is when they say that they didn't know about the warnings about Curveball, if you're going to go to war, and you know that, if you're admitting that you know this guy was important, wouldn't you challenge people on it? How credible is this guy? Wouldn't you do that anyway? So your answer of, I didn't know, is worse than it's worse than lying about not knowing, because you're not doing your job. It's unbelievable, the deceit that went on here. And of course it doesn't end with George Tenet. And the fact that this guy comes back into the news now, and now we're acting like it's a story. We knew he lied. We knew then, and we act like we don't care. Chris Matthews at MSNBC, God bless him. Because he now says he wants investigations into this, and he wants to he's ended his show earlier this week by saying he's going to demand investigations, and there should be investigations into this, because we forget, and we move on to the next outrage. But we went to war, and this is nonsense, and it's not just a screw-up. The whole investigation, the whole thing about weapons of mass destruction is about one guy whose whole name is based on a pitch in baseball, and he lied about the whole thing and made it up, and everybody knew he was lying, and they ignored it. They knew it because they wanted to go to war, and they're lying about it now. And Don Rumsfeld's having a book, and I got a friend who's going to the book tour, and it's all great. Nobody cares.
If you're looking for a cool t-shirt, all you have to do is go to bustedtees.com. Pop culture, politics, science fiction, some of their t-shirts have been featured in movies like Knocked Up and in television shows like Scrubs. Their shirts are made in the United States and they're sweatshop free. So if you want to pick up one of these snazzy tees, all you have to do is go to bustedtees.com, enter promo code YoungTurks, and you get 10% off your order.